Hi, Magnus. So excited to have you on the show. So, hello, thank you for taking the time and tell us tell us a little bit about who you are and yes, what you're up to these days and how you got here.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be having this conversation with you today. Uh, it's um, it's one of my favorite things today is talking about the future of work, the future of where startups are going, the future of everything, and how we can have a great impact on the world and on the things that we're interested in. So, my path started as a computer nerd in the 1980s. My dad was a computer engineer, one of the early pioneers. So we had computers at home since the very beginning.
Wow.
And I just fell in love with everything that you could do with computers back then. Everything from making small little games, working with the bulletin boards back then, where you would connect with a 300 baud modem and communicate with other people through Echo Mail and FidoNet, like the early things. But I was also very interested, just curious about people. So I did spend a lot of time outsourced with my friends as well. So it was a great combination. So yeah, I followed that path through university and into the dot-com bubble in the late 90s. I was fortunate enough to be part of some really exciting startups back then, where we grew from like a few hundred people to 3,000 people in just a few years. And like part of the broadband pioneers, so many things happening back then. We had such exciting beliefs. And I was a 25-year-old running around telling big executives and CEOs what to do with their companies, working with, like in Sweden, Volvo, IKEA, and others. So I'm from Sweden originally. And then my path after that continued a bit into the corporate world, which was also a great thing to do after like the dot-com bubble burst. It was good to kind of get down to the ground again and see how more traditional big companies worked, and learn everything about hiring, about personal development, how to do things in a more traditional company where you have a lot of employees. So it was an really good learning experience for me after being part of the chaotic world of startups and not having any idea in terms of, I hired probably 50 people and I had no idea how to hire people at the time. But I learned all of that. And then after a few years, about 5 years at Orange and Vodafone, including in Germany, UK, and traveling around the world, I wanted to go back into the startup world again. And I was really excited about everything around mobile phones at the time, since I worked at Vodafone, and had this idea that mobile applications could be a big thing in the future. So we started a little app development company, and that we named Golden Gecko. And it turned into an amazing success story. Like, we timed it just perfectly because we started about a year before the iPhone was launched. And when the Apple App Store came in, like, we did, boom, everybody wanted to do apps.
Wow.
So our company had explosive growth, and we did so many fun things. We also, I'd say, like, we tried to reinvent the company every year almost, because things were moving so fast. So in the beginning, it was like small games, and then more advanced apps, and then more advanced corporate apps, because like companies wanted solutions where they could integrate things with their employees. E-commerce became part of the story. Customer experience became more and more important, and human-centric design. So like all of these things were part of this journey. And we got a lot of companies that wanted to acquire the business over these years. And then finally, we decided or we found a partner that we thought was great for the future, and we decided to sell the business and become part of something bigger. So it was a US company that acquired the business in 2013. And then we continued to grow as part of that, and learning, and then artificial intelligence and machine learning became a big part of it, and virtual reality, augmented reality, and again, even more advanced corporate solutions. So extremely exciting journey. And I was also this is the short version, because during this period, I was also part of starting another four other companies. some successful and some not so. But after having done all of this, so after having worked for about 15 years in software development, or actually a bit more, I actually decided to do something completely different, and ended up, yeah, and ended up in water filtration. And the background of this was like, I've always believed that you need to look for problems that you experience in your everyday life that we can help solve. And if we find interesting problems that a lot of people have, and not just ourselves, then and if it's something where we think that we can really make a difference, then it's worth attacking. And in our case, it was water, because today, like if you look in Spain, for example, where I've been living for the last 15, 16 years, about half, I think it's almost half the population, about 42% of the households consume bottled water every week. And the same is true for Italy and some of the other countries. So it's an enormous amount of plastic bottles. And my question at the time, as I was seeing these bottles pile up at my friends' houses, was, can we do something about this? Can we offer a better solution than bottled water? And what could it be? Yeah, I'll let you jump in now.
There's so much to unpack there. I was just like inside, well, and sometimes outside, but I was just like, wow, wow, wow. So I have to say that, one of the things that struck me the first time I met you was precisely the entrepreneurial spirit that clearly you have that archetype, right? It's kind of very much, I don't know, it's like it's part of your DNA. But I also feel a lack of, not a lack, I feel that there's a balance there, right? Because sometimes I feel, in this type of spirit, a very obsessive energy, which is great for that kind of, for the entrepreneurial, to take on entrepreneurial tasks. But at the same time, what I felt from you, in addition to that, was precisely a concern with a bigger picture, with how a company can actually be a social agent, right, of change, of much needed change. And then we started talking about sustainability and things like that. And immediately I thought that you would be an amazing guest for this type of show. Excuse me. I loved how you seemed to sort of be at the right time, at the right place, on so many occasions, right? So you were part of that .com bubble revolution, whatever we want to call it. Once it burst, you took, let's say, in synthesis mode, you took what you needed from that, what served you, and you moved on to more traditional corporate setting, where you could, on the one hand, apply those kind of some of the modern strategies, but also learn some of what was happening in more consolidated and established business. So now you've got the best of both worlds, right? And you become, at the same time, in parallel, you became interested in your own personal development, and you start realizing, oh, hang on a second, you know what? Everything is connected, right? It's not like I'm doing one thing over here, one thing over there. It's, I don't know, I feel that there's a certain, that precisely having experiences from different fields and different environments, you were then able to synthesize and to see the connection in everything, and then build something, which is your most recent adventure, right? Something around something as basic as water, right? Which is something that we all need, we're all struggling with. The planet is could be in some kind of problem when it comes to this. So yeah, do you see that as a synthesis? Do you feel like, wow, I finally got it, and now this is it? Tell me a little bit about where you are right now with your current project. And yeah.
Yes, I mean, first of all, when I decided to move into this, everybody told me that I was crazy and that it was a bit of a bad idea. Like, I mean, why would you move away from software when you're good at that. So you can make it's easier to make money. It's easier, like, logistically, it's less money involved in terms of investments and so on. It's just so much easier. And I guess one of the things that excited me about it was really doing something completely new and learning from something really new. And also, I think it was so it's I mean, on the one hand, you have to have crazy big visions in these things. Like, you really have to be thinking that you can have a huge impact, because otherwise nobody will invest in it. And also, if you don't believe that you're going to have a great impact, you probably won't put the effort in that is required to really make it something big. So that's been a balancing act from the very beginning. It's like we've had huge visions, and we've missed a lot of the milestones so far. But I think we're getting there now. It's been a tough journey, learning everything about hardware design, hardware manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, and even like delivery to customers and so on. So it's but also extremely insightful. And I guess, like, one of the things that I learned from the previous ventures in mobile applications was also that after like 5-6 years, I had a lot of things that I could help others with. So you learn a lot from that experience that you can share with others. And so in the beginning, you're just sucking in information. Like, we were trying with Tap Water, which is our company that makes water filters. We were trying to meet with as many experts as possible, just going to conferences, meeting with people, getting all of this information, writing hundreds of articles about water filtration and drinking water, just so that we would be learning and then like starting to share that knowledge with others. And it takes a lot of time when you go move into a new area to become some kind of an expert. Maybe it's the same 10,000 hours or whatever they say of practice that you need in terms of, like, in sports and instruments and so on. So that's a really fascinating part. And I'm really happy that I've done this journey, but I can also see, wow, I took a difficult path in what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, what makes you believe in this so much? Why do you think it's important to reduce the consumption of bottled water, and what kind of actually positive repercussions can your company have in terms of impact on that level? Yeah.
So like, going back to your previous question as well, like, one of the questions that a lot of companies have today is what is their why? Like, why do they exist? And there's been all these talks about every company needs a why, what, and how, or what. I can't remember the order now. But I think it's interesting that not all companies really need a why. But in this case, it was a very obvious one. Like, the why for us is bottled water is just, it's a waste. Like, it's something that we don't really need. 30 years ago in Spain, people were actually drinking the tap water. And since then, the tap water quality has actually improved. And despite this, the bottled water consumption has gone up and up and up and up. So this isn't, the nice thing about it is that it should be an easy thing to resolve. This should not be hard. Like, there's other things that are really hard. Replacing gasoline cars is a hard thing. Like, solving energy needs is a hard thing. There's a lot of really hard problems to solve. This should not be a hard problem, actually, because if you can just replace the bottled water with something that is as good in terms of taste and experience, then why wouldn't people want it? And in our case, I actually don't have. Actually, I do have. I'll show one of the products here. This is fun. This is one of the filters that you attach to the faucet. Actually, that's probably not gonna zoom it. Like, give.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, basically, you just attach it like this to your normal faucet, and then there's a switch. And when you turn the switch, the water gets filtered, and when we turn it off, it's unfiltered. And it's as easy as that. You can attach it yourself, just no problem at all. And that was like the whole point, is making things that are super easy. We have like a water bottle. It's the filter inside. You fill it up, and then you drink from it. And you can drink the water wherever you are in the world. So it's things like that, and like a glass pitcher, and the same thing here is you fill it up, you pour it, and you have clean drinking water. So our question, when we started looking at this, was why wouldn't people change? Like, there's just, you save money, it's more convenient, you don't have to carry home 1,000 kilos of water everywhere. It's better for your health, and it's great for the planet. But I think what we didn't really consider was how hard it is to change behavior. And that the perception of bottled water is not actually that it's unsustainable by most people. They think, look, I buy these bottles from the store, it's water. What's unsustainable? Water. The plastic bottles get recycled. Whether they do or not is a different story, but that's what people think, and therefore, it's not a big problem. I'm not doing anything bad. So changing that behavior is really hard, and that's another great experience from this, because that's applicable in every area of sustainability today. I think it's like, how do we help people change their behavior? And the best way for sure is by finding a small group of passionate people that are the early adopters, and then getting them to communicate the message to their family and friends. And I think that's what we're seeing. You can see that obviously has been an amazing success for Tesla, that doesn't really spend any money on marketing or today, because their customers are their best sellers. And that's really where we want to get to as well, as a company and brand. And the nice thing, obviously, in the end, is that it's such a direct impact. Like, this product replaces, on average, for a family, 1,000 bottles per year. That's a big CO2 reduction. It's a big plastic waste reduction. It's a water waste reduction. And like I said, it's good for health. So our belief is, for sure, there's going to be a trend in the next 10, 20 years away from bottled water. The question is, how fast can we make it happen? And then, so that people can move on and focus on other things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes me think, on the one hand, as you said, obviously it's difficult to change people's behavior or people's way of consuming water. But on the other hand, we are, in a sense, in an era of personal development, right? People want to be healthy. People want to do sustainable things if possible. People want to sort of, at least people that are invested in being a little more conscious, right, and pay attention to what they sort of nourish themselves with, food, water. What do they read? What news do they watch? That kind of thing. It's all about what they incorporate into their system, and people are more mindful of that nowadays. So would you say that perhaps a model of word of mouth is the one that will work in this case, right? That you keep singing to the choir, as they say. You keep serving the people that already believe in this type of product, people that aren't already there, with that mindset, rather than trying to become sort of missionary about this and kind of trying to convert other people. Maybe, you can kind of let the experience that people are having sort of speak for itself. Is that the approach, would you say?
I think that's what we've learned. It's definitely the easiest. So in retrospect, yes, that's the easiest method. But longer term, if you really want to have an impact, you actually do have to spend the money on marketing and on educating people as well. But educating people is extremely expensive. So because you're taking the cost for everyone else, for your competitors as well, to some extent. So yes, but I think this is definitely the path forward. And I guess, like, to take one of the learnings as well has been that for sure you can't shame people into it. You can maybe do shaming with humor, like SodaStream has done to some extent,
right?
But you can't do that, and you can't expect so much from people in terms of changing. Like, you have this zero waste community, for example, and I was speaking to one of them just a week ago, and she said, like 6 months after she had been like cutting down their waste almost to zero at home, no plastic and everything gone. Her boyfriend said, "This has got to stop. Like we're spending way too much time on this." And she said, "What if we?" Like he said, "What if we spend the same amount of like influencing other people instead to just cut their waste by 10%? The impact of that will be so much greater than the impact that we're having by reducing our own consumption." And I think that's something that is really interesting learning in sustainability, and it comes through in a lot of cases. Like to tell people to become vegans, you know, the change that you're going to have is going to be very small. Whereas if you can get people to cut down and consume meat one day less per week, then if you can do that for a whole population, then it has an enormous impact. And it's one of the challenges that I see with all of these things that they're well intended and we want to do, and it can be like, and I see it here in the south of Spain. There's a lot of families that want to be self-sufficient in terms of food. They want to construct more sustainable houses, to reduce their waste, to live more sustainable lives. But I think the risk of this is that actually you spend a lot of time and maybe you feel good yourself, which is great. But in the end, you could actually have a much greater impact if you put the same amount of energy into doing something that influences others as well.
And influences others, but like it's kind of less demanding. That's what you're saying, right? So you kind of reduce the expectation. You don't have such an over-ambitious plan, and you kind of go little by little in the same way that you develop a habit, I guess, a practice, a routine, right? You kind of sort of allow people to gently, rather than aggressively, kind of ease into the new way of doing things. And in that case, people are a little bit more receptive to it, perhaps, because it doesn't sort of presuppose such a dramatic change. So people are less resistant to that, would you say? Would you say that that is a challenge for you with this company? You know, is that something that you see yourself sort of taking part in?
I think if we hadn't, so it's a challenge that actually a lot of our early fans and early adapters were people that are living really green lives and very sustainable. So you get the impression that that's everyone, but it's actually a very small percentage of the population. And so I think like it's very easy that we surround ourselves by similar people with similar values and similar thoughts and similar ambitions. And it also happens with your coworkers, because you hire people that are really passionate about what we're doing and about the environment and about sustainability. So you're surrounding yourself with people that don't really represent the common person that need our product. And instead, it's a small niche. So yes, I think that's a really big challenge for most companies in the impact and the sustainability space today. And that you really need to think about the diversification, and that it's okay to hire people that are not actually working for your mission, but are really good at what they're doing, and that can have and that can really contribute to your business. And maybe they stay for 2-3 years and then they move on, but the contribution they will have, the perspective that they might give, is really good.
That sounds very wise, because it's not either or, but it's kind of both and, right? And actually, if you do that, I would guess that you will also have, in addition, how can I say? Well, you have people that sort of don't necessarily think the same way, co-working, working together, exchanging ideas, and out of that bonding, you also get, a new breed, let's say, of a new generation of thinkers and doers, you know, on this matter, and like finding that balance between, excuse me, on the one hand, you know, being totally involved, but on the other hand, understanding that there is an impact here to be made that can be sort of made on a larger scale, and there's no need to fear that, let's say, especially when it comes to a business. Now, this was a brief chat, and we're gonna sort of wrap it up in a bit. But I wanted to know, what are you thinking most about these days, and what are you doing about it? So, what gets you, when I say thinking, what gets you excited these days, and what are you doing about that?
So I think one of my other key learnings has been it's really important to focus. The more you focus on one thing, normally the more successful you are. And it's so easy to get off, like to lose focus when there's so many new shiny things happening everywhere, and so many new exciting challenges, and like there's so many rabbit holes that you can end up in and spend days on. So on the one hand, I must say I have 90, like if I look at my work focus, so outside of family and friends, it's at least 95% of it goes into our current business, and in terms of how can we scale this, how can we have the impact that we want. Our goal is over the next 5 years to eliminate 10 billion bottles of plastic, which is a huge amount if you look at it, at least from a European perspective, but it's still a drop in the ocean in terms of the overall plastics consumed. But it actually feels like we want to make a dent in the bottled water space. So that's my number one focus for the next 4 or 5 years. On the other hand, there are some other topics that they're in the back of my head. One of them is really around democracy. Like if we want to create more sustainable communities and more sustainable cities and regions and countries, we cannot just do a top down. We do need to have like a bottom up, top down, and meet somewhere in the middle. And there's so much work to be done in that space. And it's like related to getting the citizens involved in how we make decisions about cars in the cities, about other vehicles in the cities, about transportation, about parks, about spaces for kids, about education, about all of these things. So I think, and it's not necessarily like politics, it's around how do we create the future of democracy. That is a super interesting topic for me.
Okay, I'm actually blown away by what you just said, and yeah, I'm having like a million ideas floating in my head right now. But speaking of focus, I'm going to try not to digress too much. I want to ask you, and I hope I can have you on the show at some point and talk about those, sustainable communities and kind of developing our citizenship, our democracy in new directions, focus on what we want, right, and what we want to see materializing. Any advice for people that kind of struggle to cultivate that focus? Would you say that it's just a practice, or any tip? I mean, there are many out there, but something that you have found that works personally with you.
Outcome want.
You're kind of breaking up.
How to get like first. All right.
Could you repeat that? Yeah. Just broke up.
Yes, it's to focus on the outcome that we want to achieve, and to really have that in mind all the time. It's like, so you stay focused on your outcome and the values that you want to achieve it, and not so much like don't jump into solutions. Think about any solution that is going to help. Can be like, so the first solution that you come up with is definitely not, it doesn't have to be the final one, and you don't have to stay so focused on the specific solutions. There's so many ways to get there. So I think like outcome focused is something that has really helped me. And it also means, like in our case, for example, we have a blog for tap water that gets hundreds of thousands of visits every month, which is about, it's actually promoting tap water to people. In many cities, we tell them you don't need a water filter. This is like the only reason you need a water filter is because of the taste. If you don't like the taste, get our filter. But you can actually drink the tap water as it is. And so outside of selling our products, we're actually communicating this to hundreds of thousands of people. So it's part of the outcome that we want to achieve. it's not necessarily what's helping our business, but that's okay because it's just part of our journey. But I think like the like staying really focused on the long-term goal, and not necessarily on like your short-term solution really helps, because you're going to have to pivot a lot in the startup space, meaning you're probably going to have to change your path every 6 months for a couple of years until you find like your right path forward. And it takes time, and like especially in the startup space, the average time for like, it's always going to take at least 2 years for a company to become profitable. In our case, it's taking a lot longer. Like we're looking at 5 years plus, but it takes time. So don't think don't be over optimistic about that. Be realistic about the time frames that it takes to succeed in the space.
And still be willing to do it, right? Even if it takes time, because sometimes, meaningful projects, they do take time, but they also last longer. So that's great. I'm very sort of moved by what you just said. So good for you. I want to ask you perhaps as a final question, where can people find you? Where can people find the blog? And yes, just kind of one last comment that you would like to leave our audience with.
So yes, you can find me on Twitter as bgreen. I think it's bgreen Europe at the moment is my Twitter handle. Or you can find me on our website, Tapwater, so tappwater.co or .com, and read one of my articles, and through that you can come into contact with me as well. So please feel free to reach out. And so I think one of the key learnings for me over the last 6-7 years is that in the beginning, I had a huge confidence in our short-term success. Like this was a no-brainer. Everybody was going to buy this product. We're going to sell millions and millions of products in a few years. Today, I have confidence in our long-term success, but maybe a bit more nervous about our short-term success, which is harder. So let's see. We're going to be successful in the long term because we have to. But in the short term, it's going to continue to be some challenges for sure. I think let things settle, give it time, in terms of if you have lots of ideas, explore lots of them, talk to people, share them, think about them, create small prototypes. Like don't jump into something straight away. Let it sink, and it's probably going to be much better. One of the biggest mistakes that I see in the startup world is that, and in like non-profits and so on, is that people jump into one thing so fast because they're so passionate about it. But let it give time, and you'll probably be more successful in the end. And I hope to see lots of successful sustainability entrepreneurs and organizers out there. We need a lot more.
Magnus, I want to thank you so much, not just for your time, but for your input. I have to say that what you're mentioning, excuse me, resonates so much with me. I mean, sustainability, any sustainable practice does require time, does require a lot of patience, right? Does require coming together and think of new ways, and kind of people sometimes with very different perspectives put their heads and their hearts together for a cause that is definitely common to us all. We need that long-term vision, right? Precisely to endure the tough times ahead that we are facing kind of short-term, hopefully short-term. It's like we all have a feeling that, we're kind of birthing something new here. We might not see in our generation or in our lifetime, the full results of what we are kind of co-creating here. But that's not a reason not to do it. If anything, it is a reason to do it, to believe that future generations might be able to benefit from this, right? I want to thank you one more time, and I look forward to catching up very soon. Thank you for being on the show, and take care. And
thank you.
Thank you. And to our audience, I will leave the links in the description, and we'll take it from there. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.